Hello, all. I will get some things posted up here in just a second. Mhm. Jeff, if you want to go ahead and get us started, I'm sending out the email with all of the documents right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Me and Liz discussed kind of how each of you was going a couple of weeks ago and decided that it was a good time to kind of reconvene the coordinated entry leads and those that are involved in the referral process to, one, have a refresher course on what the referral process is, and also look at what hasn't been working to this point, since we have been a little bit slow on the referral side of things, and making sure that we have kind of the whole group together and get everyone on the same page. So Liz is going to lead the majority of this training. Zach will also present a little bit, and then also Kristen. For those of you who I haven't met, which should be very few of you at this point, my name is Jeff Zagalowitz. I'm the Director of Housing Choice Programs at IHCDA. Liz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Liz. I am the Emergency Housing Voucher and Landlord Engagement. I always forget which word we chose. Engagement Analyst.
Liz, were you going to share that PowerPoint, or did you want me to? Sorry, Liz, you're muted.
Sorry, I have it to share.
Okay.
Let me. Okay, I had it to share.
Liz, I was able to pull it up if you need me to share it.
Okay. I just sent you to make sure that you have the most recent saved, or you just pulled it up out of the drive.
Yeah, out of the shared
Okay.
drive. It was last modified at 250, so I think it's good.
I'm just missing a couple more. Fun fact, I'm not the first person that used to hashtag the Mandolin one on Instagram. I'm not checking out who else posting pictures though.
Okay, I think that email finally sent.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right, Liz, if you want to kick us off then.
Okay. Welcome everybody. What we're going to go over today is the review of the Housing Choice Voucher Program eligibility, the Memorandum of Understanding. Kristen will give us an update of the funding of support services, current referral and utilization, and then prioritization and the referral process. And we'll go over the referral packet as much as we, or as little as we need to in detail, and then we'll open up for questions. And these silly dogs on here are BB-8 and Zoe. There are a few other surprises in there. Okay.
I think we already covered introductions, and I'm pretty sure everyone in this group knows Zach and Kristen, so we'll,
Okay.
yeah. All right.
Jeff, just so you know, we can see the prisoner
You can
view
see
is
the
what
whole
we're
thing?
seeing. Yeah.
The whole thing,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so just to give a quick summary of the program, I know most of you have probably already heard this, but the EHV program was made available through the ARP bill last spring. And through EHV, HUD is providing about 70,000 vouchers across the country. In Indiana, IHCDA, as well as a few other local PHAs in the state were awarded vouchers. IHCDA's allocation of that was 338 vouchers. And then there's, in addition to the normal HCV program kind of regulations with rental assistance, HUD has also provided IHCDA and other EHV allocated PHAs with some services funds and additional admin. IHCDA has chosen to use those funds to cover housing search assistance, application fees, security deposits, landlord incentive payments. And I'll go into that some more on the next slide. So specifically with the landlord incentives, we are able to provide $1,000 for the first EHV participant that a landlord accepts. That's $500 with the first month of rental assistance and $500 with the last month of rental assistance in that initial lease term. We just broke it up into 2 payments so that we provided the landlord with some additional incentive to keep the person housed for the full term of the lease. And then for every additional participant that a landlord accepts, it's $500 incentive payment, also broken up into 2 equal installments of $250. Additionally, during the housing search, we can pay for as many application fees as the participant submits, and that's all handled by our HCDA and our LSA caseworkers. So as far as the COC, they don't need to worry about that, but that is something to be aware of when you're referring a individual, that they will have assistance with that. And then also security deposits, which is limited to 2 months of rent, and it should match what the landlord request for any other renter that they have with a similar unit. And then also we can provide assistance with utility deposit assistance. So that can include arrears that the client may have from previous unit, just to make sure that they're able to get the utilities connected if they are responsible for the utilities in their new unit. And then additionally, to make sure they get off on a good step, we can provide them with some essential household items. And if you are working with a participant and you have a question, maybe there's something not on this list that they could use, reach out to us because it may be an eligible use. HUD has provided us quite a bit of flexibility. So, there may be something that's not on the list, but is still eligible if you reach out to us and inquire about it. And then also just important to mention that this is IHCDA's program. So if you're referring someone to Fort Wayne Housing Authority or one of the other housing authorities that received a direct allocation, they may have different restrictions on what they are willing to use their services fees to assist with. All right, as far as eligibility, this is the only individuals who are not eligible for the program, and it's just like HGV, where there's two mandatory reasons why we cannot accept a person. One is a household member is subject to the lifetime sex offender registry, or a household member has been convicted of manufacturing meth in federally assisted housing. In both instances, if it's a household of 5 individuals and just one of those is ineligible due to one of those reasons, the family will be given the option to remove that one household member, and the other 4 could still be assisted. Obviously, if it's an individual, it would just be an outright denial. So if you do have someone on your CE list and neither of these 2 things apply to them, as long as they meet the prioritization requirements that the COC voted on, which we'll go through in a little bit, they are eligible for a referral and they can be referred. Additionally, just important thing to mention, we understand that these households are coming out of homelessness, so we are willing to work with them if they don't have some of the normal documentations that we require for HGV eligibility. So they don't have a photo ID, a birth certificate, social security card. As long as they can demonstrate that they are in good faith working to get those documents, we can waive those requirements, give them an extension, allow them to lease up, and as long as they can get those to us within a reasonable time frame after lease up, they can still be admitted to the program. And that should be true of any PHA in the state. HUD's been pretty clear on that guidance that these type of eligibility documentation should not be holding up an EHV participant from getting leased up. All right, so as far as eligibility specific to the target population for this, HUD has provided guidance that and provided regulations that EHV participants must be first and primarily referred through the coordinated entry system. So in accordance with that, IHCDA and other PHAs in the state entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Balance of State COC to identify the prioritization mechanisms that would be utilized for the vouchers. Through those discussions with the COC board, it was agreed on that it would follow the normal prioritization requirements for a continuum of care. So most vulnerable first. And, that was a kind of a strategic decision, understanding that we have almost 340 vouchers coming in the state that are very low barrier as far as requirements. And we're continuing to, we have some services in place as far as housing search, and we're continuing to work on getting those long-term services in place. I know Zach will have an update on that shortly. And we really view this as these will be permanent supportive housing units. There's going to be full-time services in place once we get that funding from DMHA. We have housing search assistance funding already. Kristen will provide some insight on how ESGCV funds can also be used to provide services. It's really no different than VASH or another tenant-based permanent supportive housing in that way. All right, so I did want to highlight kind of where we're at right now and what we're seeing on the IHCDA side. IHCDA and our partners around the state, largely CAP agencies, we regularly see households calling us or applying for Section 8 that are currently homeless or on the verge of homelessness. And when that happens, we refer them to the local coordinated entry system. We do this because coordinated entry should be the door into any number of COC programs or resources, whether it's prevention resources or permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, but we want to make sure that we're getting all these households referred to CE so that they can be prioritized appropriately. So I just want to highlight a few things that we've been seeing to this point. I've provided some examples on this. This is feedback we're getting from folks who we have referred to CE. I'm not going to read through all of these, but I would encourage you to. And I will mention these are from 4 different CE regions. So it's not just issues with one CE region. It's kind of, we've been seeing it around the state where folks who are being referred are having difficulty having their call returned or getting inconsistent information from CEs. And I know that, you know, you're a large organization and there's a lot of different folks in your organizations, but we really need to make sure that when folks are calling to see your organization, they're getting a consistent message. They're not getting passed around, that they're able to quickly call, you know, if it seems like they'd be appropriate to do a VISP debt, that's being done and that they're getting put on the CE list, because that's where these referrals need to be coming from, and that's the quickest way for them to get referred to housing resources if they truly are homeless. And you know, some of these referrals we don't have all the details on, so it may be that maybe they were not literally homeless, and that's why they were kind of moved away. But we do have some that are literally homeless and they're not having responses. Pam, I did see a message just pop up from you, so let me check on that real quick. Yeah, Pam, Liz has reached out to the CE organizations on all of these. Some of them have been resolved at this point. But, you know, in general, it's just kind of a trend that we've seen. So we want to bring it to the CE leads' attentions. And it most likely, if this comment was about your organization, Liz would have reached out to you about it by now. Liz, were you going to handle this section, or did you want me to?
I I think I can for all of
Okay.
it. And I just want you to double check and make sure that the for the later part of the presentation that everything is on there, or else we'll have to switch to the one that I sent to you by email.
I actually did switch to that one already.
Okay, just checking. All right, so balance of state and continuum of care. We've all seen this map. I don't know how recently it or if it has changed since it was, because I've only been here since October. So, but I assume that you're all fairly familiar with this map and your regions and where they're at. And you know that the LSAs that we work with overlap them. So you might have one LSA that you're working with, and you might have a PHA and two LSAs, but just so that you're familiar with the map. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so the prioritization that I was able to find was the one that the balance of state had agreed on. From what I understand, there are a couple of regions that have more stringent criteria, like instead of the VI SPDAT score of an 8 and higher, it's a 14 or higher. I wasn't aware of that when I started sending emails and asking you about getting referrals in. But I just wanted to make it clear that for referrals for this program, of course, we're going to look at the CE lists and who's in the most need. But I just want to make it clear that if they are an 8 or above, they are eligible for EHV. And then the right side there is the table updated from the CE disaster policy update. And I added that for just to make sure that I don't, like I said before, I'm not familiar with what it was before COVID, so I wanted to make sure that the disaster policy was there, and that it was clear that that's what we're going by, because we're still considering COVID as a disaster in that situation. Go ahead and go to the next. Okay, so this is a lot of information, sorry. So if your supportive housing criteria is different, then this is what we're going to go by. We had Grant run a report, and these are the CE, all of the numbers on the CE list as of last week.
Last
Was
Friday.
that around Friday? Okay. And then on the right side is how the EHVs were allocated. So if you have IHCDA, It's listed there. And if you have a PHA in your region that was allocated their own vouchers, those numbers are on there. I think most of you are aware of them and are making those referrals to them. But if you have people who are in your region that are outside of those PHA limits, those referrals can come to IHCDA. We don't have a number for you as far as how they're allocated, but you should be making those referrals until we tell you that you can't.
The only thing I'd add to that is if you add up the numbers, you notice that our EHVs allotted to each region are a lot lower than our total allocation. So, we allocated some to each region to make sure that they have at least some EHV resources available to them. But the remaining of them are first come, first serve. So if you are in region, if you're region 13, for example, and you use up your 8 allotted vouchers, EHV vouchers, we still have 215 more that are first come, first serve. So, we did allocate to each region just to make sure that each region had at least some, but that is far from a cap on how many you can actually refer to us.
Okay, so with the information that I got from Grant on Friday, I looked at each region, and because the 8+ is what we're going on, I put that on there, that first column, and that is how many on your current wait list are 8 and above. And then I also highlighted the 14 and above for just for your reference. So if we were limiting them to 14 and above, there are still 424 appropriate referrals. So the fact that we have, where is it? I want to say it's 26, but I don't remember yeah, we have 26 referrals to the EHV program. That's it so far. And then we had an additional port in from Chicago. So when I say that the referrals are trickling in, that is definitely a true statement. When I first started, I had maybe 1 or 2 a week, and now it is less frequent. And I know that we all know that there is definitely a need. We're just not catching them and getting them referred. And I hope that by going through this process, we'll be able to get those referrals made soon. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Jeff? Okay. And then you were going to go over the memorandum of understanding.
Yeah. All right. So this is a copy of the MOU that was executed between the Balance of State Continuum of Care and IHCDA. And really what I want to stress here is that the main responsibility of the COC is to identify eligible households and make those referrals in accordance with the prioritization plan that the COC has voted on. So, yes, if the COCs can, continue to provide and participate in case conferencing following referral, that's great. But if that's not something you have the capacity to do, don't allow that to keep you from making the referral. If you can get us through referral, Liz is going to continue to keep in contact with these households and do some extent of case conferencing. Our LSA caseworkers who work on our HCV program will be in contact with them. And then hopefully within the next few months, we'll also have CMHC staff that is working on these from the services side. So, the main responsibility for COC CE leads is to identify those eligible households on your CE list and be making those referrals to us. As far as how to prioritize them, I'd say it's the exact same as if you have a PSH property opening up in your area that is, highest vulnerability first, no subpopulation to that. Just go down the list, contact someone. If you can't get a hold of them within 3 days, move on to the next name on the list and just continue to work through your list just like you would for a normal PSH property. And Kristen, we're going to have you speak a little bit about the ESG CV funds and how those funds can tie into these vouchers. So I'll let you go from here. Just let me know when you need the next slides.
Okay. So just to remind everyone that the ESG, or Emergency Solutions Grants for COVID, came from the CARES Act funding. And all of the funding is to go towards preventing, preparing, and responding to coronavirus. So you can kind of read through what kind of activities fall to preventing and preparing for and responding to. Um, Whenever I talk to some of our subrecipients about this is if you can make a case that it is COVID related, then we can talk and see how these how what you're trying to do can fit into this funding. Next slide. So I just wanted to summarize. So for this funding, we had over 31 million, almost $32 million that we allocated for different purposes. We have rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention, just homelessness prevention. Some of our funding went to emergency shelters, some went to street outreach. And then there's some that remained and is focused on HMIS related things. I think the critical number here is the number of projects that we have in each category. So we have 24 hubs or homelessness prevention rental assistance type projects, 12 rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention, 12 shelters, and 36 outreach. And actually, I think that's reversed. I think it's 36 shelters and 12 outreach. I apologize for that mix up. The reason that I wanted to point out that is that there are some unique activities that can be funded through the ESGCV program that are specific to each type of category of funding. Next slide. Okay, so when the funding came out in 2020, HUD allowed for certain unique activities that were what we call the original eligible activities. They included training, hazard pay for individuals or for organizations to provide to their employees. There was also for our street outreach agencies, hand washing stations and portable bathrooms, etc. Then we, for our rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention, we had landlord incentives and volunteer incentives. And I know based on what Jeff said early that there are some landlord incentives that are associated with the EHV program. You know, again, ESGCV can also be used for landlord incentives. We would just want to make sure that we are not duplicating benefits on any of these. If you have questions about any of these particular ones, just let me know. If you go to the next slide. In July of 2021, there were additional eligible costs that came out. HUD revamped the entire guidance for ESGCV funding. And so they created some new eligible activities that may or may not be of benefit for this program, but things like cell phones and internet. This is it allows the cost for providing temporary cell phones for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. With this particular thing, the recipient or the subrecipient have to maintain ownership of the cell phone. So these are things that can be on loan to individuals who might need them. There's also additional eligible activities around PPEs for both homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing programs. It's the cost to purchase PPEs such as masks, disposable gloves, and hand sanitizers, etc. For this. I think originally it was geared towards the emergency shelter subrecipients, but they've expanded it to include anybody who's working in the rapid rehousing or homelessness prevention. There's also eligible activities for furniture and household furnishings. Again, these costs and would be for items that the subrecipients would maintain, so they would keep, but they would give on loan to families who need it and provide stability for individuals who might need it. Incentive or essential services for rapid rehousing, HP. This is revolves around hotels and motels, so providing vouchers for individuals who have to stay in hotels and motels before they are moved to a more permanent solution for their housing needs. I'm not going.
Oops, sorry.
That's all right. I'm not going to go through all of these because I don't know if they all pertain to you. I'm just going to highlight the ones that might. There's also some provision for providing renters insurance if it is something that is preventing them from getting into their housing. So ESGCV funds can be used to secure renters insurance should they need that. And then one thing that the new guidance provided was expanding from just tenant-based rental assistance to a sponsored-based rental assistance. So, just that's a category of rental assistance that the original guidance didn't allow for. Does anybody have any questions about these? Okay, so moving on to the next slide. The one thing that I wanted to point out is if you are going to work with any of our ESGCV subrecipients, we have to provide a quarterly report to HUD. So this is our opportunity to provide the information around the data that's being collected in the HMIS database. Our HMIS team provides that information to HUD. So as long as our ESGCV subrecipients are putting that in to the system, then we can generate that report. And then for expenditures around the unique activities, we do ask that any of our ESGCV subrecipients maintain records on the expenditures so that they report that back to us each quarter, and then we upload that to HUD during our quarterly report. So I see Pam Brookshire, you have a question about, are you telling us to combine ESGCV funds with EHV? We're giving you that option. I don't know if we're going to tell you to do that, but what we're trying to do is to give you opportunities and options so that you can house individuals as you see fit and can do this. I hope that answers your question. The other thing that I wanted to add that I did not include on this, because I know some of our CE leads do receive a mini grant from us to do CE related activities, and the COC portion of those CE grants, you can use some of those funds to cover the cost of doing the work related to this activity. So if it's related to mitigating the coronavirus, then that is an eligible cost on the COC CE grants. And if you have any questions about how that works, you can always reach out to us, and we can kind of talk you through how that would work. Next slide. I think this is the last slide maybe that I have, and that's just we do provide monthly office hours for our ESG CV, our hubs, which are our homelessness prevention subrecipients, and our rapid rehousing shelter and outreach, or RSO as we call them. The last Monday of the month is for our RSO. And so we can provide information and ongoing support to our ESGCV subrecipients in this area to help to bridge these two programs so that we can get the assistance out as quickly as we can. And always, if there is any need for a one-on-one support, our team is here to provide that to you. And Amanda Fronick is our ESG CV grants analyst, and she would be the one to start with. And we can set up a one-on-one to discuss whatever you're thinking about with these funds.
All right, Kristen, thanks for jumping on and giving that overview. I think there's definitely a match here between ESG CV activities that are eligible and EHV. So I'm hopeful that some of the COC organizations will be able to take advantage of that and use some ESG CV funds to help get these households housed. All right, Liz, back to you.
Okay. Sorry, I pulled things up because I was looking for things for the questions in the comment. Okay. All right, so there were questions in the comments about some of the PHAs that were allocated EHV vouchers. This website is the dashboard for EHV, and the numbers that it is showing, it looks like I clicked on Indiana, but you can look on there and you can see the entire country's numbers. Indiana, over on the left, it has the breakdown for each PHA and how many they were allotted, how many have been issued, and how many have been housed. So currently, for us, on the right side, this is at the end of December. We have the referrals that have come to me. So if you are sending referrals to the other PHAs that have EHV vouchers, that's not included in these numbers here. Okay, so for Region 1, we've received 11 referrals. Region 2A, 1. Region 3, we received 4. Region 5, 1. And Region 8, 6. And I've gotten a few more since then. And then one port in. So that's how we're doing. The country overall is doing better than the state of Indiana, but nobody's doing really, really well. We're all trying to figure out the referral process and collaborating and working through this all together. There are some regions that have PHAs that are doing well, or relatively well. But I just want to stress that if you have a PHA that has their own allocation, that there are still people all over your region, not just the city that you serve, but all of the counties also, who are making phone calls to anybody and everybody they can, looking for help and trying to figure out how to access the emergency vouchers. I think I did not mean to. Okay. All right. And this is Zoe in her pajamas.
Sorry.
So the things that you can do to identify the eligible emergency housing voucher participants, you can go through your wait list right now and refer the people who meet the criteria. If you want to refer just half of what you're allocated and then go through the list again in a few weeks, or however you feel like you need to do it. But the few referrals that I'm getting, I'm not sure if they are coming from the top of that CE wait list or if it is people referring from other agencies. They meet the criteria on our end. I'm just not sure how they're coming through your system. You can refer those in need through your own agency's homeless outreach once they've been assessed. You can share referral information with the agencies you would normally get CE referrals from. So any partnering agencies, domestic violence agencies that want to refer, you can share the referral information with them. A lot of times they have caseworkers who can complete the paperwork and gather documents, and then they can refer them to you for the CE assessment, and then you guys can refer them to us. You can assess the prospective clients who are referred to your agency by members of the community. They are calling your agencies and they are coming to the front desk and they are talking to people who don't know anything about EHV. They're being told that we don't have emergency services and they're being turned away without talking to somebody to find out if they're an appropriate referral or not. So that's our concern there. And then if you are looking at your CE wait list and you are trying to figure out if these 5 you have selected are an appropriate referral or not, and you want to ask questions, I can make myself available for case conferencing so that we can get the referrals in. Next slide. The referral process is just, these are the things that you could be doing. It just expands a little bit on the previous page, but just to make sure that when people are assessed, they are being entered in HMIS, that VI SPDAT score is there, and the referral is being made for EHV and not just a regular CE referral. I think in the beginning there was some question, Jeff, as to how it was being entered, but that's been resolved, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay. So sorry. All right, so the referral packet came to you in an email from Jeff around July or August.
Yeah, around that time.
Okay, so the image on the right is the template for you, for your agency to go through the checklist when you have the client and their information, anything that's missing for this birth certificates, social security cards, or anything like that, you would leave that blank and then make sure that you're including something that shows that they're trying to get it. So proof that they've requested the social security card or the birth certificate or a new ID. Okay, next slide. For anybody that's not familiar with other, okay, this is the same paperwork for all of our referrals, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so for anybody who is not familiar with that, these first pages are the tenant information form, contact information, biographical data. Please make sure that they're printed clearly. If one of them that came in didn't have a social security cards for the children, they were still working on them, but I couldn't read what was written in the on this form. So it needs to be clearly written just in case there's a delay so that everybody can be entered and there isn't any missing information in Housing Pro. right. Page 2. All right. On the citizenship, everybody has to complete page 1. The head of household can sign for a minor child, but any other adult in the household has to sign for themselves. Page 2 only needs completed if they are not a citizen or an eligible has an eligible immigration status.
And I'll just add, if you have someone on your CA list that is not a citizen, you're not sure if they'd be an eligible non-citizen, just reach out to us and we can let you know if they meet HUD's criteria for eligible. Also, if it's a mixed household and there's just one member in it that's a non-citizen that's ineligible, the household can still be assisted and we can work with you on how that would work. So if you do have a unique situation where you have a household on your CE list that has one or multiple non-citizens in it, just reach out to Liz and myself and we can walk you through how that would work.
The next 3 pages are authorization for release of information forms. And the first one is the release of information. The second 2 are the Privacy Act notice for the release of information. And we just need to make sure that all of the adult household members are completing those. Okay. Criminal history. Even though the criteria for EHV is we can only deny them for those 2 things that we mentioned earlier, it's important for them to know we still have to check and that they may still have difficulty finding a landlord that will accept them, but that they're still eligible. And then if there's a situation where they are porting to another housing authority that we don't have an agreement with an LSA, then they would be subject to that housing authority's criminal background requirements. Was there anything to add on that?
I'll just add that we are working with the non-EHV households in this non-EHV PHAs in the state to try to either just directly administer RHV in their jurisdiction so that they're not required to pass more strict criminal background check. The issue is if we port them to another housing authority that doesn't have EHV, the voucher at that point is converted to a normal HCV voucher and all the normal HCV criteria apply, which can be a much higher barrier. So if you are referring someone who is most likely going to need to port to another PHA that's doesn't have EHV, maybe Columbus, New Albany, etc. Give me and Liz a heads up on that so that we can get out in front of any potential barriers as far as eligibility goes.
All right, this part of the packet is for disability and accommodation. And if they are requesting accommodation, by all means, make sure this all gets completed. Sometimes I'm getting referrals that this isn't in there at all, which is fine if they're not requesting an accommodation, but we'll have somebody who will, at the beginning of the packet, will say that they are disabled, and then they're not showing any evidence that they're disabled, and they're not requesting any accommodations, but I'm still going to send that follow-up email just to make sure that we aren't missing this form for one reason or another. Okay, and this is the alternate contact form, HUD 92006. This is required. If they don't want to share an additional contact person, they don't have to, but I would strongly encourage them. And if it is not a friend or family member, make sure that it is somebody within the agency that is helping them fill out the form. We want to be able to reach them, and if sometimes there's a gap between when you get them referred to me and then I get them referred elsewhere, and the LSA doesn't get a hold of them right away, we want to make sure that there is another person so that we can reach out to them and start the process. The EHV pamphlet, this is one that is just really easy to skip that signature. It prints long ways, and if you have a printed packet, it ends up being in a weird spot. So you just want to make sure that that signature gets there, and you go over with them the what the information is used for and what the penalties are for providing false information. And I don't know, Jeff, would they in this group of people, would they already know what EIV is, or does that need its own explanation?
Probably not. Yeah, if you want to
Okay.
explain EHV real quick.
Okay, so EIV is
Earned income verification.
Earned income verification, yes. So at the beginning of the process, we can check the previous, what was it? Existing and former and existing tenant search. So we can do that. But once the client is on the program, when we submit changes, it goes into the system and it updates it. So it shows their earned income, Social Security, and things like that.
Yeah, so the main takeaway from this is just that they are signing on this, that they understand that we will be verifying any income that they have reported on their tenant information income, the TIF form, tenant information form, through the EIV system. And if we find that they have income reported in EIV that they did not report, they be found to have submitted fraudulent information, be required to pay back funds to the program.
Okay, and this is the zero income self-certification. Sometimes we'll have people at the beginning of the packet say that they don't have any income, and then when they get to this form, they're putting things in these boxes that they don't think apply. So you want to make sure that you are reading over this and you're familiar with this, so that at the beginning of the process, you're asking about Social Security benefits and child support and being very specific about it. If they have income, then we don't need this form. If they don't have income, they need to complete the entire form. They can put NA down at the bottom half if it doesn't apply to them, such as diapers if they don't have any children. But otherwise, they need to put something if it's an expense that they have, even if it's a donation, or and just write that in that space. Okay.
Before we jump into questions, Zach, did you want to give a quick update on services?
Sure. So some of you may remember we had talked about adding some services with these vouchers, and that was in our original conversations about deciding the prioritization for the vouchers. So I know it's taken a long time, and some people are wondering where the services are, if we're still going to be receiving some sort of funding here. And the answer is yes. It has taken a little while to work through the process with DMHA. Department of Mental Health and Addiction has worked with IHCDA, so they're going to partner with us to commit some funding from their mental health block grant to provide supportive services for these households. So we envision this going to community mental health centers, but we have some wiggle room so we can make sure we have coverage all around the state. And we are anticipating that everyone that receives an emergency housing voucher will be able to participate in services if they choose. So we know right off the bat that even with the amount of money, which is over $5 million that we're going to be getting from DMHA, that we have a gap in services still. So IHCDA received about $54.5 million in home ARP funds through the American Rescue Plan Act, and that those funds can be used for services as well. And there's a pretty good menu of services they can be used for. It's very robust. So IHCDA is is going to be proposing that we allocate some funding towards services to use for individuals with these vouchers to fill in any gap and make sure that we're braiding our funding sources appropriately, that we will have the funding available to serve everybody, and that we won't run out of money, and that all necessary services are going to be covered. So our allocation plan, we have to submit an allocation plan to HUD for those funds. The public comment period, that allocation plan will be posted for public comment sometime this week. It's not up quite yet, but it'll be up sometime this week. So when that is up, we invite you to read through that and submit comments to us, and or attend the public hearing to participate in a feedback session on that plan. But as soon as that is approved by HUD and those funds are released to us, and we are currently in the contracting process with DMHA for those other funds, as soon as those things are approved, we will be moving as quickly as we can to get those services dollars out into the community. We know that there is definitely going to be a little bit of a lag, and unfortunately, some people who are referred now aren't able to get extra services and extra help in finding unit. Which is unfortunate, but we know that we are going to be getting those funds, so we are really pushing to get these people housed in unit now, and give them an opportunity to get in units now, so that they are safe off the street and in their experience of homelessness, and then we will work as quickly as we can to get those services wrapped around that individual.
Thanks, Zach. Well, we still have some time for question and answer. I'll also add that me and Liz are going to try to do this at least monthly, not a full presentation length, but at least be available for Q&A from any CE leads or CE organizations. So we will be sending out invite in the future for just kind of office hours Q&A. It'll probably be the same, maybe the last week of every month. So do be on the lookout for that. But also we can take any questions if you want to put them through the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself. We'll take questions. Or comments.
So I guess like I'm excited to get started with making referrals, but what responsibilities are kind of the referring agency taking on by doing this at this point?
Mm-hmm.
I guess our understanding was, since there weren't the services beforehand, if we get someone housed and the landlord is having trouble, now we're kind of on the hook. So that's been our big issue, is going off the top of the list. There's people that need a lot of help, and we're ready to go as soon as we feel that once those people are housed, they're going to be taken care of. That's been our only hang up this entire time.
Yeah, so Zach may have a little bit to add on the services side, but as far as what is listed as COC responsibilities in the MOU, it is identifying the eligible households and making the referral. It's not as if there's going to be zero services for these folks, even at the beginning. We do have some services funds. If you can provide any services using those ESG CV funds that you may have, we would encourage you to do so. And then, hopefully within a few months, we'll have some DMHA and ARP funding to get the CMHCs involved. There may not be full wraparound services initially, but we'll still be engaging in case conferencing with the households through our LSAs and with Liz. So it may not be the most robust services initially, but there will still be some services. The COC organizations are not required to provide us any services. Once the referral is made, their requirement in the MOU is just to identify eligible households and make the referral. But if you have funds and resources available, we'd certainly appreciate it if you did provide any services, even if it's just initially while we're trying to get the CMHC services set up.
Okay.
Hey there, this is Danette in Region 12. I had asked a question earlier in the comment, I was asked to bring it up in this part of the meeting. And so my question is, or let me first say, we've had several people that have completed their meeting and orientation with our housing authority and have received their vouchers, but they are now creeping up to the 120-day mark with no moving forward with getting housed. And so if that voucher lapses, can we have the housing authority give them another one, or do we need to put them back in the pile and then somebody else might prioritize over them and create a new selection?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on the specific housing authorities' policies. So IHCDA's policy, we will provide extensions as long as that household's staying in contact with us. Obviously, if they just disappeared, we can't even get a hold of them. We're just going to expire the voucher so someone else can be served. But other housing authorities may have different policies, so certainly have them request an extension. I think most housing authorities will provide an extension as long as the household demonstrates that they're actively searching for housing. But if the housing authority does still expire the voucher, they can be re-referred. We see that in the VASH program all the time, where someone is referred and they either are terminated from the program or their voucher expires and the VA refers them right over again. So that is an option.
Yeah, you'll just have to know that we'll probably need a new referral packet so that all the signatures are fresh and things like that.
This one is particularly with the Evansville Housing
Mhm.
Authority one, so
Keep
I
forgetting
will
that.
talk with them about that.
Yeah, if the household hasn't requested an extension yet, they should certainly formally request an extension. And then if it's denied, you can cross that bridge about making a referral.
I just want to add something to that comment in the earlier one. So we are already behind a little bit on timing in terms of getting these vouchers out and leased up. But the process right now, especially because there's a housing stock shortage around basically the entire state, the process of leasing up and identifying units and actually getting people into units is going to take a long time. And if we wait to start that process until all the services are in place, then we're going to be really, really behind. The startup process, the length of time it's going to take just to ramp up and get people in units is already going to be a long time naturally because of the way that the rental market is right now. And there's little that we can do to control that piece. But if we start now, we're working quickly to sort of build it around so that by the time we're really getting people into units, that those services are in place.
I do see a question from Catherine in the chat. Yes, we can add the debts owed HUD 5675 to the referral packet. It's easy for us just to get that at briefing too, but we can just add it to that so that when you're getting all the other signatures, we can get that one as well. That was probably just an oversight for it not to be included originally. And Liz will be sending out kind of all the documents and referral packets to this group following the meeting, just so that everyone has all the backup documentations and the PowerPoint for your records. Another question: if we have a PHA, are we supposed to be making referrals to IHCDA too? Yeah, if you have a household in your COC region that is not in your PHA's county, you can refer them to us. So, if Evansville is your PHA in your area, but you have households outside of, I think that's Vanderburgh County, but that are still in your region, they can be referred to IHCDA. And also, if we're not at this point with any PHAs yet, but if your local PHA's EHV utilization gets to 100% and they have no more vouchers left, they can households from that city can be referred to IHCDA, and we can work with your local PHA to get those administered in that county.
I have a question. Because our PHA isn't one of the ones that were given to him directly, I've reached out a couple of times to several different people here to try to get a copy of the MOU kind of template because they are not on HMIS, so that I can still discuss our CE list with our PHAs to figure out which ones are on their list and which ones I can submit EHVs for.
So you're
Region 13.
Okay, yeah. All of those referrals should come directly to IHCDA for you all. So any Region 13's E-list referral would come to IHCDA,
Correct.
and then we would have those conversations with your local PHA, or we would just directly administer it in their jurisdiction through CASI or OVO. So your local PHA would not necessarily need to be involved at all in those
But you just
conversations.
said that you would be in contact with them at some point. So if I needed to have like our case conferencing with our PHAs, because we have 3 different PHAs, we have New Albany, Jeff, and Charlestown. We've reached out to Cassie actually to try to be part of ours, but they're not actually responding back to us. So I want to be able to discuss our coordinated entry lists with our local PHAs because they are the responsive parties in our region to helping us try to get everybody housed.
Okay. I think this might be getting a little bit more in the weeds. So let's schedule a call with me and Liz and you for later this week so that we can kind of get into the weeds of specifics with Region 13. And I'll send an email to you and Liz after this so that we can get that scheduled.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, I think we can wrap up. As I mentioned, Liz will be sending a follow-up email with the PowerPoint and documents that we discussed today. She'll also be creating an FAQ, which will be running FAQ from future meetings too. Liz, if you also want to give a little preview on the event that we're planning for February, so that folks know to keep an eye out for that.
Yes, we have not set a date yet, but we are going to do a training on all of the voucher options that we have, not just EHV. So we'll do the reminder of EHV, and then we'll talk about the moving on. And I think Danny's going to help us out, and he's going to talk about the port process related to those other programs.
Yeah, so that's really going to be focused on, in our voucher program, we have several kind of ways for a household to be referred out of CE to a voucher, whether it be or out of CE or through the CLC PSH unit for moving on. So just highlighting all the different ways that we have coordinated between the COC and our HEV programs to make sure that you all are aware of kind of all the avenues to long-term assistance for those households through our voucher program. If you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to email any of us at IHCDA. If we don't know the answer, we'll find out who does. And if you want to schedule a time to talk with me and Liz or any of us to kind of go through specific things with your region, we'd be happy to schedule a time to meet individually with your CE team. Also, Liz is, as I said, going to be sending out some future invites. If you have any other folks in your organization that you think would benefit from these types of trainings or events, please forward it to them. Okay.